Okay, this video is a comparison of plant and animal foods. And plant foods basically have all the good stuff that people tend to be deficient in because, Americans, Westerners don't eat enough plant food. So first of all, they got fiber. Fiber is wonderful. It prevents abdominal pressure syndrome, prevents autoimmune disease, prevents amyloid clotting, lowers estrogen levels, allows them to be excreted out of the body, helps also excrete cholesterol out of the body. It does you a favor. Potassium and magnesium are your big vasodilator ions. You need those to run all your ion pumps in your brain and in your arteries and everywhere else in your body. People, American Westerners, tend to be deficient in potassium and magnesium routinely. And if you're deficient in magnesium, it's the block of the NMDA receptor in the brain for glutamate. So it protects you from excitotoxicity. It helps prevent dementia. Okay, helps prevent seizures. It's your friend. Magnesium does all kinds of wonderful things. Okay, M for magnesium. It's also the mellow you out ion that helps you to be calm and thoughtful and rational. Helps to calm a person down. Like for kids, they're deficient in magnesium, they're more likely to be attention deficit, and the adults anxious and whatnot. Okay, nitrates. Those are the precursors. Come from your greens, for example. They get converted in your mouth. The nitrates are NO3 in your mouth. The bacteria in the back of the tongue make them to NO2 nitrites. They go to your stomach. And the stomach acid also facilitates conversion to nitric oxide. Systemic vasodilators. It's like what you get when you walk out in the sun. You release, in the sun, you release subcutaneous precursors of nitric oxide. And you get this diffuse bodily vasodilation. You feel good. Okay, so anyways, what's next? Antioxidants. The plant has to stay out in the hot, let's say it's 100 degrees out in the field. The animal, the human, can go walk in the shade of a tree. The plant has to sit there and protect itself from the sun all day long, 100 degrees. It does that with antioxidants. So when you eat the plant, you get the antioxidants. You don't get hardly any from an animal because it's used them up. You get the complex carbohydrates, the starch, polymer glucose wrapped in fiber, slow release of the glucose from the gut to the blood because the fiber slows down the absorption. And that's what your brain needs. That's what your body runs on. You could eat a diet of 95%, like what Kempner would feed patients, around 94% complex carbohydrates, and he just fed them about 4% calories from fat and about 4% from protein, 2% for fat. I get those two a little mixed up sometimes, but it's about the same difference, okay? You don't need hardly any fat. You can get by just fine with like 1% fat. 2% maybe. You don't need much. There's been big cohorts. They just fed less than 1% of their calories from fat. They did fine. White rice, 1% of calories from fat. Potatoes, sweet potatoes, 1% calories from fat. All this good fat stuff that you hear on the internet, that's not true. It's nonsense. Okay, just so you know. Okay, so now let's take a look at animal foods. And after you've seen the good stuff in plant foods, the stuff in animal foods, it's like nonsense in comparison. Okay, look at this. Okay, what does meat have an advantage? It's got more vitamin B12. And don't get me wrong, meat for our ancestors was a great thing in cold winter because, if you're freezing outside, there's no plant foods growing, you're in a cold northern environment, you can get milk from a cow that can keep you alive. You can eat the animals for meat that can keep you alive in a cold winter. Our ancestors would thank God for that. But in the real world, food is more available, okay? So you have the option of eating plant foods, and they're a lot better for your health. So look at this. Other than vitamin B12, that's the only good thing animal foods have that plants tend to be low in. And they both come from the bacteria. It doesn't come from the animal itself. It's just that the animal stores it and it's more readily available to us when we eat animal food. Okay, so what are all the problems with meat? There's tons of them. High saturated fat. It's obesogenic, diabetogenic, insulin resistance. So it increases beta amyloid protein, increases cognitive decline, tissue hypoxia, it decreases O2 delivery. It's bad. Sat fat is bad. Okay, don't listen to anybody tell you otherwise. There's mountains and mountains of data to show sat fat's bad. What about animal protein? Look at T. Colin Campbell's book, The China Study. Animal protein is the number one carcinogen. It's got more leucine and methionine, activation of mTOR, mammalian target of rapamycin, increase in cell replication, increasing speed of cancer growth, dead. T. Colin Campbell, the world's expert on animal protein, says it's the number one carcinogen. Okay, number one thing in the world to cause cancer, more than any other chemical in the whole world, is animal protein. In particular, casein, the milk protein. Great. No other animal drinks milk from another species. No animal drinks milk after it's weaned. No animal drinks milk from another species in nature. Okay, animal protein also has a little bit of an anabolic effect with the increase in branched-chain amino acids and the activation of mTOR, telling a cell to get ready to replicate. So it also will increase blood cholesterol. So that's important. People think only fat increases cholesterol. No, animal protein also increases blood cholesterol. T. Colin Campbell writes all about that in his China Study book. When people eat high protein diets, they get more H. pylori in their stomach, more predisposition, risk of duodenal ulcers, peptic ulcers. There's more bioaccumulated herbicides and pesticides because the animal eats high on the food chain, so it all starts to accumulate going up. Especially too, a lot of these cattle, they feed them, GMO corn, GMO soy. Not good. The fish get all the HG in them. It's toxic. High fat, high protein foods like animal foods have more advanced glycation end products just intrinsically, and then you cook them as well. Not to mention they're diabetogenic, so once you get diabetic, endogenous AGs as well, more from them. There's more arachidonic acid in foods like eggs and chicken, for example. You don't get hardly any of that in plants. That's associated with increased inflammation. Increase estrogenics. They give estrogenics to the cattle it's a fat storage hormone to fatten them up, make them gain weight faster. Nowadays, pregnant cows are given milk, and so it's got estrogen through the chart, increasing their kids' risk of premature puberty. Heme iron is higher in animal foods, especially, let's say in red meat, for example. When it's heme iron rather than just regular iron, it's an increased amount of it's absorbed. And it's an oxidant. You get increased N-nitrosyl compounds in the colon, increased risk of colon cancer. Meat foods tend to often be preserved with sodium, flavored with sodium. So you get a high sodium diet. It tends to be associated. They're low in magnesium and potassium. So it's the opposite of a plant. Sodium is a vasoconstrictor, not to mention all the other problems it causes. Okay, they're often fried. Fried is bad. When I talk about plant foods, I'm talking about a low-fat, organic plant foods here. Okay, so it's quite often that meat is fried, cooked in some type of pan, quite often in a non-stick pan, and you get POFA stuff on the meat potentially as well, or you inhale it in the kitchen. Xenosialitis, because it's got different sialic acids, let's say on your meat, your red meat, your dairy. The sialic acids will have what's called Nu-5GC. It's something that mimics the human Nu-5AC, but it's similar enough to be absorbed and incorporated into our proteins. Into our cell glycocalyx, but it's different enough that it's recognized as foreign by the immune system, so that induces inflammation. Xenosialitis is really like a type of autoimmune disease. So meat increases your risk of autoimmune disease. It also increases your risk of autoimmune disease because it lacks dietary fiber, and the fat increases the risk of leaky gut. So when you get leaky gut, you get increased bacterial endotoxins going into your blood, and that can cause LPS from gram-negative bacteria, LTA from gram-positive bacteria. That'll cause increased amyloidogenic clotting. Amyloid clotting means the fibrinogen changes from a alpha helix cylindrical structure, secondary protein structure, to being flat beta-pleated sheet, and then they stack up. The more they stack up and aggregate, the more likely they are to precipitate out a solution. It's an aqueous solution in the blood, the plasma. And so to precipitate means to clot with blood. And so you form all these microclots, these amyloid microclots from leaky gut, and those can plug up small arteries in the heart, cause microvascular angina, can plug up small capillaries in the brain, and predispose to cognitive decline. That's an under-recognized thing. Viral infections will also increase amyloidogenic clotting, okay? Excessive iron overload, and high free iron in the blood will increase the likelihood of amyloid clotting. I've given previous lectures on it. That's a really important subject that hardly anybody knows about. And just plain old autoimmune disease from leaky gut, also from oxidative stress. Okay, and then people think, oh, fish is a good food. No, fish is for chumps, okay? Anybody who tells you fish is good for you is a BS artist. Take a look at the Jan Hightower book about, all the HG contamination, and there are all these yuppies making themselves go demented in their 40s because they're eating all this fish. It's for chumps. And O3 fats are quite overrated, omega-3 fats. They're an immunosuppressant, increase your risk of prostate cancer, decrease your body's ability to fight infections. That's a totally overhyped thing. I've made previous lectures about that. So anyways, here's my point. Like I said, trying to say meat is anywhere in the ballpark of plants, it's like trying to polish a turd. It's a joke. It's stupid. Okay? I would eat meat if meat would make me 18 years old again. I would. I'm not one of these animal rights people. Okay? A lot of these animal rights people, they don't care about humans. Okay? So, I'd like people to be nice to animals, but I'm just saying, is the reason I eat a vegan diet is because it keeps arteries open and it keeps you healthy. Every single thing in your body functions better with good blood flow. All of this stuff opens up artery. All of this stuff eventually leads to sickness. Most of it is obesogenic, insulinogenic, and causing atherosclerosis, plugging up your arteries. Then you're screwed, okay? So anyways, there's no comparison. Plant foods are just much, 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 much healthier than animal foods. They just are.